Hi, and welcome to this video. It has been quite a long time since I have seen you. I haven't really been in quite the mood to film still, even during this quarantine when I have all the time in the world. So I figured since it's been a long time, I should still, even though I'm not in the mood, put out a video because it's been 3 months since I've done a book wrap up. So I'm gonna share with you all the books that I read in January, February, and March. Now, I know in the thumbnail it shows, a good amount of books, but that was still not all the books that I read. I actually read a total of 23 books for those 3 months, so we have a lot to talk about. So I probably won't spend too much time talking about the books because I don't want this video to be hours long. But I still want to talk about statistics as well, so let's just get started and talk about the statistics for each month. So in January, I read a total of 5 books. 3 of them were hardcover, 2 of them were paperback. I read 1 male author, 3 female authors, and 1 book that was written by an anonymous person, so I don't know what their gender is. I read 1 book that was released in 2020 and 4 books that were backlisted. I read 2 adult books and 3 young adult books. Genres were all over the place. I read 1 romance, 1 play, 1 nonfiction, 1 fantasy, and 1 mystery. Now the shortest book I read was 203 pages, and the longest book that I read was 667 pages. So the total amount of pages I read for the month of January was 1,849. That averages to about 59.6 pages a day. I think this was my best month stars-wise. I read 1 3.5 star, 1 4-star, 1 4.5 star, and 2 5 stars. So my average was 4.4 stars, which is really good. So now for February, I read a total of 7 books. 3 of them were hardcover, 4 of them were paperback. I read 1 male author and 6 female authors. I read 1 book that was released in 2020 and 6 books that were backlisted. I read 4 adult books, 2 young adult books, and 1 middle grade. I read 1 nonfiction, 3 romance, 1 religion, 1 play, and 1 fantasy. Now, the shortest book that I read was 95 pages, and the longest book that I read was 418 pages. But total, I read 1,918 pages, which averages to about 66 pages a day. Okay, so stars-wise, I read 1 2-star, 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 2 4 stars, and 1 4.5 star. There was 1 book that I read in February that I didn't rate, and I can explain why once I talk about the book. But average, it was 3.5 stars. Okay, now for March, I read 11 books. You know, quarantine started, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I did a lot of reading. 5 of them were hardcovers and 6 were paperback. 5 were male authors and 6 female authors. I read 2 books that were released in 2020 and 9 books that were backlisted. I read 7 adult books, 3 young adult, and 1 middle grade. I read 2 contemporaries, 1 play, 3 humor, 1 romance, 1 poetry, 1 sci-fi, and 2 fantasy. Now the shortest book I read, I have it here as 40 pages. Technically that book is longer, but because it's a choose your own adventure book, I only counted the amount of pages that I specifically read, which was 40 pages. And then the longest book that I read was 699 pages. Crazy. Want to know what's even crazier? The amount of pages I read total. I read a total of 2,972 pages, but that averages to 95.8 pages a day. It's a lot of reading. Stars wise, I read 1 1-star, 1 3-star, 2 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars. There were 2 books that I did not give a rating for, and again, I can talk more in depth about why when I get to those books. But my average was 4 stars for the month, so really happy with March overall. And now how I'm going to discuss all of these books, I'm not going to do them in order of like when I read them. I'm going to do them in order of my goals for the year, or sections, I guess. So I have a lot of reading goals for the year. The first of those goals is I want to read at least 1 2020 released book a month. The one I read for January was One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus. This is the sequel to One of Us Is Lying, which I read I think 2 years ago was when it came out, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was going to be a standalone, but it turns out there is now a sequel, and I'm so happy there was because this was really good. The first one follows like it's kind of like the Breakfast Club type story, but we follow these like 5 kids in detention. One of them dies and the other 4 have become suspects, and it's just trying to figure out who killed this other guy in detention and why. And it's really cool. Now with the second one, I like that it still connects to the first one, but we are following like a completely different story. So in this one, we do kind of follow like the next generation at the same high school, and there's a new person trying to play like a truth or dare game with the whole school. And if you don't do the dare, then a truth will be revealed about you, and it's usually a truth that's not a good one. And so it's just trying to figure out who's doing this, why. There is a death involved that happens during one of the dares. It's a mystery that definitely had me guessing like the whole entire time, and I actually enjoyed this more than the first one. We'll see if there's a third one. I don't know if there will be, but who knows. Anyway, I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. The one I read for February was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, and this was cute as the title suggests, but I don't think like the romance in this was as cute as everyone was hyping it up to be. This is definitely like a You've Got Mail situation. We have these 2 people, Pepper and Jack. Get it? Pepper Jack. They're friends at school, or they become friends at school, and they also handle the social media accounts for their parents' restaurants, mainly Twitter. The one restaurant ends up accusing the other restaurant of stealing one of their recipes, and it turns into like a Twitter battle, but they don't realize that they're the ones battling each other on Twitter. And then there's also another aspect where there's like this anonymous school online communication thing where they don't know who the other person is, but they're kind of falling in love on that platform, but they still, again, don't know who the other person is. It's confusing to explain, but it's not confusing while reading it. You can totally understand everything that's going on. And it is cute, and I like the plot, and I really enjoy the like family dynamics in this story as well. But again, I just don't think it was as cute as everyone was saying it is, because everyone was giving it like 5 stars. I didn't get that feeling with it, but I did still enjoy it, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay. Now for March, I read 2 2020 releases. The first one was Break Your Glass Slippers by Amanda Lovelace. I had no idea she was coming out with another poetry collection, but I saw it, had to get it, and I really love this one. I think this is my favorite of hers so far. She does these poetry collections that I guess you could call them like Instagram poems. I don't know what else to call them, but they're like very short, but I feel they're very impactful at the same time. And she handles a lot of tough topics, but she tells these poems and these tough topics through a fairy tale style, hence the Break Your Glass Slippers. This is kind of based off of Cinderella. So just so you know, this book contains some child abuse, toxic friendships, toxic romantic relationships, sexual harassment, eating disorders, fat phobia, suicide, trauma, and possibly more. So just be aware going into her poetry collections that there are going to be a lot of trigger warnings. Also, the art style in this is different than her past books, and I really enjoyed them. There's one. I really like that one. No, so I really like this one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The last 2020 release that I read was The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I was very excited for this for 2 reasons. One, Marie Lu, I really enjoy her books, so I was really looking forward to this. And 2, the plot and like the storyline seemed really interesting. It follows Nannerl Mozart, Wolfgang Mozart's sister, even though Wolfgang is also a part of the story as well. It follows them as children, but we are from reading it through Nannerl's perspective. And Nannerl just really wants to make a name for herself, and she really enjoys writing music, and while she's like writing music, she ends up creating this fantasy world that she and Wolfgang go to. So that like really intrigued me, mostly because I really do enjoy Mozart, and I was happy to like find a fantasy that involved Mozart, but I hated this book so much. Ugh. I ended up DNFing it. I think I got like 200 something pages into it. Like I got around here. So I read like this much of the book, and I couldn't. I was like, why? I don't care how this ends. I don't care about what's going on. It was so boring. And also too, I felt like the writing was almost too fantastical. Like it was trying too hard to be lyrical and beautiful and whatnot, that it just kind of really took me out of it. So I was not a fan of this one, and I gave it 1 star. Now, another goal I gave myself for the year is to read at least one 2019 release a month. And that's because I really want to try and read some books that I wanted to get to last year, but didn't quite get to them. So, the one in January that I read was A Warning by Anonymous. And Anonymous is a senior Trump administration official. It is someone in Trump's wheelhouse, I guess. But this is a political nonfiction book about the Trump administration and what has happened so far. And it's called A Warning because it's warning you what will happen or what will continue to happen if Trump is reelected. It was very scary learning some of these things that Trump had been doing and is still doing, and the way he treated his staff, and just it was terrifying, honestly, that like this man is our president. And I highly recommend this to everybody to read. It's so good, and I learned so much reading this. I mean, I don't know if you can see, but I tabbed this book like crazy and highlighted it like crazy. I think this is a very important read, and I loved it so much, even though it was terrifying to read, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. In February, I read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So this is a book that came out last year that's been on everyone's top 10 lists of 2019. Like, everyone's been putting this at number 1, number 2, and everyone's been giving it 5 stars and loving it so much. So and also it's a hate to love romance between the first son of the United States and the Prince of England. Which is just like everything I was like looking for in a book, but I only found it okay. I think for me it was like I liked the concept, but I didn't really like the execution. I thought for me there was too much sex, I think, or like the sex was just like too descriptive that I was like, I feel like I shouldn't be here. This is like a private moment. And also too, like I didn't believe the romance. Like I believed the romance from the prince, but I didn't believe the romance from the first son. I felt like it was more of a physical connection than an emotional connection. I didn't really get much of an emotional aspect. It just kind of went from like hate each other and this is just strictly physical to all of a sudden I'm in love with you, and I'm like, I don't understand how we got there. But I really enjoyed the side characters. They were my favorite part of the story, and I also really liked the politics and how it played a part in their relationship and in the story. Overall, I enjoyed it, but it was just okay for me, so I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then the 2019 release that I read for March was McTrump by Ian Dozier and Jacopo della Quercia, 2 Shakespearean authors who I love very much. I have read stuff by both of them, and I think they are fantastic at writing Shakespeare. And they have turned the Trump presidency into a Shakespearean tragic comedy, and this is part 1, so this is only like the first 2 years of his presidency. I'm assuming there's going to be a part 2 once Trump's reign is over. So it was funny, it was clever, I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't really have much to say about that one. Now, another goal of mine is to read at least one Shakespeare play a month, and that was something I did last year and I'm continuing on this year. The one for January I read was The Tempest. This one was an okay one for me. In this one we follow Prospero, who was a duke, but then his brother usurped him and he got banned to an island with his daughter. And now we're like a bunch of years later. His brother and his like council or friends or whatever are floating by on a boat, and so Prospero is like, hey, my spiritual servant, who's kind of like a magical fairy, I don't know what he was, go crash their boat and separate them and make them come to me to enact my revenge. It was interesting. I liked the setting. I really liked it taking place on like an island on the coast and like being around the sea. I don't know, I kind of liked that setting. I was more interested, I think, in Prospero's backstory and his like revenge for what he wanted, but I love how his revenge didn't end with murder, how most revenges do often end with Shakespeare plays. I don't really have much to say about this. It was okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The one I read for February was Measure for Measure, which I really liked. I was not sure how I was going to feel about it, but I'm happy I really liked it. We have another duke Duke Vincenzo, who decides to disguise himself as a friar. So he's like letting his people know, like, hey, I'm gonna be gone for a while. You be in charge. Who did he put in charge? Alonso? Angelo. I was close. So he put Angelo in charge, and he disguised himself as a friar to figure out how his people would handle things. We mainly follow a guy who is engaged to a woman, but then the woman ends up pregnant with his child, and they arrest him and sentence him to death for, having sex with this woman even though they weren't married yet. But Alonso is very, very strict with the rules, and then the Duke, disguised as a friar, tries to help them out, and it was very good. I really enjoyed the political aspect of this book. I also really liked his use of the disguise trope that he likes to throw into his plays, but I thought this one, it worked really well. And what I think I loved the most was, like, there's a lot of humorous dialogue that just kind of shows the hypocrisy of Alonso. His name is Alonso, right? Why am I, like, constantly forgetting? Angelo. Oh my god, Angelo. I really like this one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Another one I really liked, and it's the one I read in March, and that is Hamlet. In this one, we follow Hamlet, who finds out his dad, the king, has died, or was murdered, and now his uncle is the king and has married his mom, which is just weird. Like 2 weeks after his dad has died. But then his dead father comes to him in ghost form and tells him that his brother killed him. What was his brother's name again? I can never remember names. Claudius. And then his dead father comes to him as a ghost and says his brother, aka Claudius, the new king, who's now married to his mom, murdered him. And so Hamlet is like, I must seek revenge. And that's kind of what the whole story is about, even though throughout the whole story he's constantly like, I'm gonna do it now. You know what? I come up with an excuse to not do it now and do it later. Which I found kind of funny. I thought it was a really great ending too for this type of story, and it was very complex, very thought-provoking. I really liked this one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I have one other goal for the year, and that is to just pick out a random book from my TBR bag, but I think I explain it in the video clip, so I'm just gonna cut to that video clip. Hi! Alright, so we're gonna do this in vlog form for the month of January, but for the next couple of months for the rest of the year, hopefully I will be doing it more of as like a filmy setup. Whatever. Okay, so this year, as I've probably already explained, I want to do one random pick book for the year each month. I'm doing a great job already of explaining this. So basically, I have a bag here, and this bag is full of books that I own that I have not read. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 2 books from this bag, and then from those 2 books I will choose one to read. So let's figure out which one I am going to read. Alright. Okay. So this is going to be the first one. And it is... Alright, it's The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks. I actually really enjoy Nicholas Sparks' books. I've read a couple of his. I still need to read a bunch of his, and it's been a while since I've read a book by Nicholas Sparks. Now, I have watched the movie version of The Best of Me, and I enjoyed it, so I'm hoping to read the book one day. Maybe it'll be this month. We'll see. But let's see what the other option is going to be. So we've got an adult romance, and we've got a young adult romance. This is called Smart Girls Get What They Want. It's by Sarah Strohmeyer. I read one of her books a few years ago, another young adult romance, and I really enjoyed it. Oh, good lord, which one do I go for? I think I'm going to choose Smart Girls Get What They Want. So January's pick was Smart Girls Get What They Want by Sarah Strohmeyer. I really liked it. It's one of those like super light, fluffy teen romances. And sometimes most of the time I'm in the mood for those. I thought it was a good story, really good friendship that was in here too. I also like that it's not just about like friendship and about romance, but it's also about finding new interests for yourself, which then in turn it makes you find who you are. It was a bit unrealistic at times, but usually I don't mind too much when reading these types of books. But it was cute and I liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, hi guys. Sorry this is a really weird angle and I swear it is bright in my room, but my camera cannot register that it is actually bright in my room. So I'm probably up to the brightest on this shot. But it is time to pick a book from the TBR bag. Because it's February, I like to read a lot of romances. So if a romance book is picked, that is most likely what I'm going to be reading. Okay, so... Oh, okay. Interesting, not a romance. And then... Oh, there are like 5 in that one. Okay. Or there were 10. Okay. This one. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so let me show you the options that I've chosen. Or the options that were chosen for me. Okay, so the first is Nasty Women. This is a nonfiction about feminism, resistance, and revolution in Trump's America. I definitely do want to read this. It's a bunch of like short stories about those topics. But my other option is definitely the one I'm going to go with because of multiple reasons. But it is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. I literally just bought this one, and so I find it so crazy that I picked it out of my TBR bag. So I'm picking this for 2 reasons. Number 1, it is a romance, and 2, it's a 2020 release. And for this year, I've been trying to read at least one 2020 release each month, so this will probably be for that pick as well. Yay! The one that was chosen for February obviously was Tweet Cute, which we've already talked about and reviewed, so I don't need to talk about that one. So on to March. Hi! It is time to pick from the TBR bag for March. March, I've already picked out a couple of books that I want to read, and it's a lot, so I don't know how I'm going to pick or fit in another one, so whichever one's shorter might be the one that I go with, but we'll see. So this first one, ooh, okay. Interesting, interesting, interesting. So what is the next one? Oh, I really want to read this one. Okay, I think I know which one I'm choosing, but let me show you both of the books that I chose. Okay, so the first book that was chosen was Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller. This is a Christian nonfiction book. It says it's non-religious thoughts on Christian spirituality. I've heard good things about it, and I actually really do like some Christian nonfiction, and this one's also pretty short. But the one I'm ultimately going to go with is the second one I chose, and that's After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I still need to like finish reading her whole like repertoire of books, I guess, but definitely going to choose my all-time favorite author to read, even though it is a tad bit bigger, but it's okay. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm gonna cry my eyes out reading this. I know it. So for March, After I Do was chosen by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. She's an all-time favorite author of mine. At this point, I only have one more book of hers that I need to read, and then I will have read all of her books. And I will say I did enjoy this, but out of all of her books that I have read, this is my least favorite. In this one, we follow a couple. They've been married for a couple years, but they're starting to fall out of love with each other, so they decide to do a year-long separation. And it's just kind of about them losing love, but then trying to find that love again. And it was really cute. I mean, it was also kind of sad at times. Not gonna lie, most of her books are pretty sad. And I did really like the whole finding yourself aspect of the story. But I like how the author like wrote her emotions, because you really do feel for what she's going through, and you understand how she is feeling. And so you're able to like really sympathize with her. So I liked that a lot. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so now all the other books I have left to talk about are just random books that I have read that have nothing to do with any of my goals for the year, so we're just gonna do those in random order. The first one we're gonna talk about is The Geography of You and Me by Jennifer E. Smith. She is another author that I absolutely go to whenever I want a very cute, light, fluffy teen romance. She's one of my favorites for that genre. And this one, I will say, was not a favorite of mine. I didn't really like it too much. And I think the reason I didn't really quite enjoy it that much was just because it was a long distance friendship that then at the very end turned into a romance. And it spans like a lot of years as well. But basically these two teens, the power goes out and they're both in the elevator and they get stuck in the elevator until eventually they get out and they're like, oh, we're connected because of this experience we had together. But then, I think it's like 2 weeks after that moment, the guy, he moves and goes traveling with his dad throughout the whole country kind of a thing, and she ends up moving to England with her parents, and they just they still like stay in touch a little bit here and there through postcards and stuff, but overall, they don't really stay too much in contact, and it spans over like a bunch of years, so, but eventually, like at the end, they get together, which, you know, you expect to happen, but it's just like, it was a long journey getting there. But I did really enjoy the travel aspect of this book and all the places that they went to and the things that they experienced, so I liked that. Overall, it was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then we also have The Gospel According to Harry Potter by Connie Neal. This was a book that was loaned to me, so I still have to go and return it, which reminds me I need to make a phone call. This author takes the first 4 books of Harry Potter and relates things from within the book of Harry Potter that relate to things that happen in the Bible. And she wrote this for, you know, those like crazy Christians who are like, oh, Harry Potter is satanic, don't read it. Which is like stupid in my opinion. Anyway, but she writes this mainly to them to be like, you guys are idiots because the Bible is like all over the Harry Potter books. And to be honest, like I appreciate that about the book, but overall it was like very dry writing and it felt very repetitive and it was very boring, but I still read the entire thing. I do also wish that like she had written another one that was for books 5 through 7. So overall, I mean, I'm happy it exists, but it just definitely was not the kind of writing that I'm into, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I also read another Harry Potter related book, and that is Calling All Witches. I didn't rate this one because this was just a simple little tiny book that just talks about all the women in the Harry Potter and wizarding world, even the bad ones, and their impact on the wizarding world. Not much to say about it, and I didn't rate it, so. But if you like Harry Potter, go for this one. It's cute. I also read This Will Only Hurt a Little by Busy Phillips. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Busy Phillips, but I like some of the stuff that I've seen her in, and I don't hate her or anything. But after reading this book, I definitely like her a lot more. My favorite stories were definitely at the beginning. I really actually liked learning about her childhood. It was tough to read at times. I did not realize what her childhood was like, but whew. I found that very fascinating and interesting and very candid, and she's so honest throughout the whole thing. Like, her voice is very honest and does not hold back. She was definitely not afraid to call people out and not afraid to name names, aka James Franco and a couple of other names. I did think it got a little bit rambly at times, but overall I really liked it a lot and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I also read another book. This is technically a reread, but because it had been since elementary school since I had read it, I could not remember a single thing about the story, so it kind of felt like I was reading it for the first time. But that is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. When I read this in elementary school, this was like my favorite book. I remember loving this book so much, and I was so nervous because I was like, I remember loving it, but I can't remember anything about it. Will I still love it as much as I did when I was younger? And you guys, I still love this very much. This still holds up even as an adult. And there was a movie that came out on Disney Plus based off this book. I do have my review of that in my movie wrap up. But right now we're just going to talk about the book. I love everything about this book. I love the characters, I love the story, I love the writing, and I love the messages that it gives, and it's just a really great story. And I liked Leo's voice. I like his character because we do follow Leo, so we are in his perspective for the whole book, and he goes to this school where not much really happens, but then they get a new girl. Her name is Stargirl. That is her name. and she is definitely not like anybody else. She is her own unique person, and at first she kind of brings a lot of uniqueness and fascination to the school and some like really good things, and he's very fascinated by her, and he kind of starts to grow feelings for her, but then things go south and people end up not liking her anymore, but he still wants to be with her. And it's just about, not so much about like their romance and their relationship, but just about like being who you are, being true to yourself, no matter what people think. So it was very good. I love this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I also read 2 choose your own adventure stories that are kind of similar to each other, and those are the ones that I did not give a rating for because I wasn't sure how to rate them, since you got to get a different ending each time. But I read To Be or Not to Be and Romeo and or Juliet by Ryan North. These are obviously choose your own adventure stories based off of Shakespeare novels. This one's based off of Romeo and Juliet, obviously, and this one's based off of Hamlet. So for this one, you can either be Romeo or you can be Juliet, and this one you can be Hamlet or you could be Ophelia or you could be the ghost of Hamlet's father. And it was very, very funny. I think these are both very clever. I read this one twice and I read this one 3 times because I wanted to follow each different character and try and get like a different ending. These were both very hysterical. If you're a fan of Shakespeare, I highly recommend reading these. There's more than 100 endings for both of these books, so I definitely want to like continue to read these and get different endings each time. I also read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I still have not watched the TV show, but I've read this in anticipation for the TV show because I love Reese Witherspoon and I'm very excited about the show. But I wanted to obviously read the book before watching the show. It's weird. I still don't know how to feel about this book. I think this one I definitely need to talk more in depth about because I enjoyed it a lot, but I also didn't enjoy it. So it's been very confusing. It's like a mystery, I guess, and it kind of reads like a mystery. It starts off, someone has burned Mrs. Richardson's house down to the ground while Mrs. Richardson was inside. But she has escaped and like sees her house on fire, and it's just trying to figure out who did it and why. I was not interested in that mystery at all, but from that first scene we then move on to a couple months before that to see how this all transpired and how we got to that ending. And we start off with Pearl and Mia are moving into Mrs. Richardson's like guest house, I guess we can call it, and they're renting it out. Mia is a artist and like a painter or whatever, and she has a daughter, goes to the high school. And then Mrs. Richardson, there's the husband as well, Mr. Richardson, who is a lawyer. I believe Mrs. Richardson is a journalist, and then they have 3 kids. And this all takes place in Shaker Heights, and it's a very nice upper class neighborhood, and we have a bunch of different stories going on. So you have the whole Mrs. Richardson and Mia aspect. They're kind of butting heads a lot, and Mrs. Richardson's trying to find out about Mia's past, which I found very interesting. I wanted to learn more about Mia and her past and that mystery that was going on. But then we also have Pearl, the daughter of Mia, who is going to school, is friends with Moody. Moody really has a crush on her, but she's sleeping with Moody's brother, whose name is escaping me at the moment. But then she's also become friends with their sister, Lexi, who finds herself pregnant and gets an abortion. And then we also have the story of, I think it's the Richardsons' neighbors or something, or like friends that also live in Shaker Heights, and they've been trying to have a baby for years, and then they adopt a baby, but it is revealed who the real mother of the baby is, and the real mother wants the baby back, and it turns into like a court drama, which Mr. Richardson is defending for and whatnot. And it's just, there's a lot of drama that goes on, but most of it is very like bland and dull. But the way she writes it is so interesting. It made me want to not put it down. So it was weird how like I wasn't interested in what was going on, but at the same time the writing style was just so interesting. So like I said, I really liked the Mia backstory aspect. I also really liked Lexi's storyline. I liked her character development from the beginning to end. Oh, and I totally left out another character, Izzy, which is another one of the sisters. Oh my god, so Mrs. Richardson has 4 kids. How could I forget about Izzy? She's kind of like the black sheep of the family. and she takes a big liking to Mia. I didn't like any of the characters really, I mean, except for I guess Lexi, but it wasn't so much that I liked her character, I just liked her character development. So this was an interesting one to kind of rate because I'm not sure really how I feel about it. So I think I'm just gonna go kind of like in the middle and say 3 stars. I also read a book that I picked up just because of what's going on right now with all this quarantine and stuff, and that is Contagion by Erin Bowman. This is a sci-fi horror. I was not expecting the horror part. We follow this group of people. They work for like, I think it's like an engineering company or something, but they are sent on a mission to a planet that is very far away that they got a distress call from, because one of the company's posts is out there and they made a distress call, so they sent the closest people they could to there to try to figure out what's going on. But they get to the planet and basically a contagion had broke out and turned pretty much everyone into like zombies in a sense. But they found one survivor, and it's just them trying to escape the planet without getting infected. Not all of them do, just saying. All I know is this was fantastic, even though it was terrifying. It was so fun to read. I could not put it down. Anytime I was like, alright, it's gonna be reading time right now, all I wanted to read was this book. So I flew through this pretty quickly, and I'm reading the second one right now, and I'm really enjoying that one as well, just a spoiler alert. But I really like this a lot. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the last 2 books that I'm going to talk about are both part of a series, and that is Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. These are both massive books, but so much fun. I love Cassandra Clare's stories, her writing, I really like them. So this is I think the 3rd series within the Shadowhunter world. There are like a lot of series out there that are in the Shadowhunter world. But this one follows Emma and Julian. I'm gonna hold up just one. Oh, I can't hold both of them. But this follows Emma and Julian. They're in the Los Angeles Institute. They are parabatai. And then Julian has a lot of little brothers and sisters that he has been taking care of for a lot of years. Some dead bodies are showing up. There are humans, there are fairies. And obviously right now they're not on good terms with the fairies, so they don't really care, I guess, too much about the fairy bodies, but human bodies. But it's just also like they're trying to solve what's going on and who's doing this and why it's happening, but they're trying to do it behind the Clave's back, because if the Clave finds out that they're trying to search out why all these fairies are dying, it's not going to be good, because no one cares about the fairies. But also another aspect about the story that I really like is Julian and Emma, since they are parabatai, they're not allowed to fall in love with each other, but they are falling in love with each other. And it's such a great romance. I love the way Cassandra Clare writes her romances as well. And I really, really, really loved Lady Midnight a lot. Her stories are very fun, very fast-paced, and action-packed. So I gave Lady Midnight 5 stars. And Lord of Shadows I gave 4.5 stars. I did like it just a little bit less than Lady Midnight. I'm not really quite sure why. I think it was just because it had second book syndrome, where there was like a lot of things that happened, but at the same time it didn't feel like a whole lot was happening. I will say though, the ending of this one was crazy and I was crying. So I really liked a lot of the books that I read in the past 3 months, and I really actually enjoyed discussing them with you guys. But also go check out the movies that I watched for January, February, and March, and then also just like kind of my life wrap up for those months as well. I will put links to those down below, and I will see you guys later with more videos. Bye!